How do we make sure that our spirituality is not one big bypass of life? And how do we make sure that it is well-grounded, that is wholesome, constructive, and that creates more connections as opposed to placing us in a situation that is depersonalized, eerie, and unfulfilling? In today's video, I want to talk about this topic. This channel is Meditation Amsterdam. My name is Pablo. And in order to get into it, I would like to start by stating some obvious old-fashioned psychology. And this comes from Maslow, who described the human pyramid of needs. And he rather described a hierarchy, but is often depicted as a pyramid. And just as with any other pyramid, we see a very broad base of fairly mundane needs that should be met in order to climb to higher levels. So that the lowest part of the base of the pyramid from Maslow is simply physiological needs, followed by safety, and at the top, you have self-transcendence. And we would be inclined to think that that makes the top sort of better than the base. But really, what it means is that we are a system that is supported by mundane things that enable higher levels to be reached. And those higher levels inform and harmonize the lower levels. So there is a collaborative relationship between the levels of the pyramid. We also want to keep in view the teachings from Taoism that teaches us to be like water. And water is not only always flowing, but also tends to seek the lowest point. It always gravitates towards the lowest point, which makes it always very stable and very grounded. So the Taoist practices are never about going all the way to the top and neglecting the mundane bottom, but about filling from the bottom up and making sure that we are always very stable and very wholesome in the way things feel about the normal parts of our lives. This week I've been doing a review about a book called The Pearl Beyond Price by Almaas. And I didn't want this video to be about that book or to have it interrupt the flow of the book review sequence. But he says a couple of things that I thought were very relevant to the topic. One of them being transcending a situation is not necessarily the same as resolving it. Meaning that you can reach very high levels of awareness and consciousness by going around your problems. And that doesn't mean that you have solved anything. And it also doesn't mean that there's no price to pay for doing this. The price to pay, of course, is the price of disconnection. And he also says something very interesting that I quoted in part, or rather mentioned during the first installment of the book series, which is that he says, a state of impersonal peace and stillness is not the answer. Whenever the mind is there, the question or the questioning is there too. The answer, if there is one, must be at all levels and must satisfy all parts of the human being, even his logic, if it is to be a complete answer. So Almaas is of the camp of a kind of resolution from the bottom up in order to reach the higher levels, not about bypassing things, and making sure that our mind is satisfied in the process too, which very often we depict as the enemy. We think that the ego is the enemy, the thinking mind is the enemy. I myself have made very many videos about how we should try to veer more towards the perceptual and away from the conceptual. However, the conceptual has its place, clearly. We don't want to throw logic out the window when it comes to how we negotiate three-dimensional reality, because otherwise we're going to get punched in the face, right? And it's clear from Almasa's writings that he wants to go not to the highest level to forget the rest and neglect the rest, but to create a whole human being. A human being that in Chinese lore would be called heaven, man, earth, the bridge between the absolute and the most mundane levels of existence. So, in essence, what we're looking for here is how can we use both our emotional intelligence, our thinking and logical intelligence, and our connection to daily mundane human life and activities and the needs that we have as, yes, infinite beings, but infinite beings being expressed in a human embodiment. And that human embodiment comes with certain principles that you break at your own risk. And we, rather than breaking them, want to go with the grain of our human nature, cultivate it, and in fact become so engrossed in it in an aware and wholesome kind of way that it propels us to higher levels of mindfulness and development of our spiritual and awareness-based identity. So that is in essence the gist of the video, is about making sure that our garden variety human needs are always cultivated and never ever neglected when it comes to health, when it comes to emotions, relationships, making a good living for yourself, making sure that you are intellectually engaged. Those are not counter to the spiritual path. How could they be? They are part and parcel of it, and they can be used not only as vehicles, but as the very practices that make sure that we have a very strong base so that we can reach those higher levels in the spiritual path. I'm very curious about your opinion on the topic, so do share it in the comment section. And as usual, keep in mind that if you find these topics helpful, that others may benefit from it, in which case sharing, liking, and subscribing makes the content more available and is also very motivating to me. So I invite you to do so, and I'll be back with more videos pretty soon. And until then, thanks for listening. Cheerio. Bye-bye.